All right. Well, I can't wait to jump into this topic today. This is like a dream come true discussion. The younger you are, I feel like the less you care about your health. Although my kids care way more about their health at their age than I did at mine when I was their age. But the older you get, the more you think about your health, what you put into your body, how you take care of your body. I just get a sense in America that there is a push to take care of yourself much more than ever, even though most of what we consume in America is really, really bad. So we've got some awesome guests that we're going to be talking with today that we have on the show. Dr. Klein, been my doctor. You've been on the show before. You're my doctor for about 2 years. We have a great relationship. Dr. Luke, he's been in my life for 4 years now. He single-handedly changed my life because he was able to figure out and heal something that I was dealing with about 4 years ago, and I've been going to you ever since.
Yep.
And then Dr. Tracy, we got introduced a while back. Nutritionist, so good at what you do. And so we've got 3 very specific healthcare perspective minds here. And we're going to look at the whole you. We're going to look at the inside of you, the outside of you. We're going to have a discussion on many, many levels of how to take care of your body from the inside out. So the first question I'd love to dig into is really preventative healthcare. So it's when everything's going great, there's nothing wrong with you. How do you stay that way? So here's the question. How can everyday habits influence your overall health and prevent disease? Whoever wants to jump in, have fun with that.
Well, starting in the morning, starting moving, I'm sure, as
Absolutely.
Dr. Klein can discuss, and you can too, is it starts from the minute you get up. Absolutely. Movement, diet, exercise, stress reduction, all of that and reframing stress, especially in today's society, is a key. And you need social, spiritual there. So from the minute you wake up.
When you say the minute you wake up, when you say movement, you mean jump right into exercise?
That's a personal thing. I like to roll out of bed and hit exercise because I feel like for me personally, I'm the most energetic in the morning. My body is the most ready to move in the morning. Most of us are. And I think getting up and doing some type of movement, whether it's stretching, running, weights, something is going to help you move.
Yeah, I actually have a question on that.
Sure.
Anybody can respond. Does it matter if you work out in the morning, in the middle of the day, or the afternoon, or the evening? Is there science behind or rationale behind the most ideal time to work out, or exercise, or as long as you do it for X amount of minutes a day, you're good? Does it matter when you exercise?
Here's the key. It matters that you are exercising. Okay. There are some journals where they say that in the morning there's a better boost, if you will. You're getting out of bed, right? Your energy is peaking. The cortisol levels are changing, right? And it's the ideal time because, for all of us, before we begin our days, which everyone in here, some days can be stressful. So by having exercised or done something in the morning, okay, you've already set up your body to be able to handle that, right? Because you're calm, right? You've just done a workout. And I always say to my patients, do 30 minutes of something, right?
First thing?
First thing. If it means walking, if it means doing some free weights or whatever, you take 30 minutes because what's going to happen after that is then the food. All right. And I always tell my patients, right, the favorite part. But the point is, what are we going to grab? And hopefully that first meal, whenever that first meal is, right, after exercise, let it be something that's much more higher in protein than not.
Right out of the gate. So workout, protein.
Because we want that protein to really kick in. And I think, unfortunately, again, American-style breakfasts have changed through the years. If we all stop and look back to the 70s, how many of us were shown there was a bowl of cereal, 2 pieces of toast, orange juice, coffee, right? And that was, quote, the ideal.
Right.
And that was the ideal way you got fat. So it was just not nutritious.
It's like eating a bowl of pasta first thing in the morning. It just gets uptake by the system a lot faster. And it's great, but it doesn't sustain you long term. But also, exercising at the end of the day too is a pretty good time. You have and also just an uptick of testosterone and growth hormone and all that is it's a good time to do at the end of the day or beginning of the day. You hit kind of that midday lull, not as great for energy production, but at the end of the day, you got to move, and that's the most important thing.
Right.
So as long as you're doing
Absolutely.
something.
Exactly.
Is there any, besides exercise and eating protein first thing, what else can you do to really prevent, any types of diseases or stay healthy?
We take a very holistic approach, and that's a great question because today many of my patients are coming in and they're recognizing, okay, I've got to change certain things. What you put in your mouth is going to dictate what you are. It really is. So the food that you consume has to be clean food.
What's that
It
mean?
really means. So by clean, I'm talking about you really have to strive to be putting sources of food that are non-contaminated. In other words, buying the most freshest kinds of fish, buying the most freshest kinds of meats. And if you have to spend a little bit extra for that, to do that. It's really key, the cleanliness of the food, not being laden with antibiotics, not being processed, right? Nobody should be eating at a fast food restaurant because there's nothing really safe at a fast food restaurant. Most of the menus today don't even have the salads like they used to. And even then, it's suspect when you have the salad. And I see patients, come in and say, well, I'm eating the salad. And you're using the dressing. Like, take a look at the caloric intake of the dressing alone, right? So you might have had greens, but now you're pouring all of this on there. There's a lot of preservatives in food. There's a lot of things that are just that don't need to be there. So, one of the things that Tracy and I talk with our patients is the cleanliness, i.e., looking at the ingredients. The fewer the ingredients, the better you're going to be.
So how do you find clean food in today's environment when you have fast food on every corner? What restaurants are better than the others? Is Whole Foods the grocery store that nobody can afford that has good food? Like how do you stock your house of clean food when you're on the run and you've got craziness, you got games to show, you got things on your calendar, and you need to get a quick bite?
All right.
What do you do?
So I tell patients, like, they'll tell me they don't have enough time. Now, I work 6 days a week. And I work
Plus nights.
plus not. No, I do because I have patients in Australia and New Zealand, and then coordinating those schedules. So I do, and I teach at night too. So I also happen to be the one who cooks in my house. So what I do is I carve out some time on a budget. We can do this. There's beans, legumes. There are studies that have stated that, okay, I'm not buying everything organic. I may be targeting local farmers markets all over the city of Charlotte and the world. And I'll go and I'll take as fresh as I can get. And then I do a prep. And again, I'm not the greatest prepper in the world. I'm sort of a fly by night. What do I feel like today? But I've made it my business to say I should open up my refrigerator and I should have I make little tiny salads. Dr. Klein could attest to that because I bring in a bento box of little tiny salads of everything. And then I throw it all together. And then, I'm married and my husband opens up the refrigerator and it's not going to be, it's always a million salads. It's always a million, like there's rice and beans in there right now. There's 3 different kinds of lettuce and other salads. And you just throw it in and throw on some chicken or some other stuff. And it lasts a week. For people who can't afford to have organic, freshly grown local produce, there's some tricks that we could teach you with some baking soda, soaking your products for about 12 minutes. In that, it removes 99% of the pesticides out of there. So we can make it work. We can make it work. And we can make it work on a budget. So there's no reason for anybody, or there's plenty of reasons, but there's I could find any
There's a lot of excuses.
There's a lot of excuses, but we can make this work for you on your budget, your time, and your desire. You don't have to like to cook to eat healthy.
It just takes planning too, right?
Exactly.
Like you really have to.
Yeah, and I'm not good at planning.
Yeah.
So you're on vacation. So you couldn't bring your salads on vacation. You're in a place that you're not used to and don't know the restaurants, like in Hawaii or on a cruise or something, how, and this might just be one of those times you just got to eat what you eat, but
No.
what do you do in those situations?
You know, most of the time, let's just take Hawaii or take a cruise or whatever. I haven't been on a cruise, so I don't know exactly what goes
I was
on.
literally just on a
Okay.
3-week cruise.
So we're going to talk about
Oh, the
that in a minute.
nutritionist was on a 3-week cruise.
Right.
All right.
So it's going to be interesting what she
Yeah.
says. But the reality is there is always going to be some healthy options, but you have to really be committed to finding them.
Mm-hmm.
Eggs, okay? You know, great source of protein, okay? The nuts, right? Great sources of protein. When you were in Hawaii, you had the availability of some
Great fish.
right, great
Yeah.
fish right there.
Fresh.
And very fresh. Even some of the meat that was there, you know, again, very fresh and so forth. So it's the hard part is really saying, you know what, I'm committed to eating this way now. Okay. One of the things that we teach our patient is, you know, this is really what we both of us tell our patients, you know, learning to redo eating takes a couple of months, you know, if up to a year, to really start to change the way you look at food. Okay. And that's key, because one of the things we also promote is the amount of sugar that is in the American diet
Oh, it's awful.
is a huge amount. And we know that sugar is a inflammatory agent to the gut. It's inflammatory to the skin. It's not great. And yet the consumption continues to go up because it's in everything.
Everything.
Okay. And you really have to make that effort. I mean, we had this discussion once about a patient drinking cranberry juice, right?
Yeah.
And I remember saying, just look at the amount of sugar. It's just, you can see it. And cranberry juice, pure cranberry juice, is so tart. So what a lot of the manufacturers are going to add is a lot of sugar, right? So you're looking at,
Yeah. Or it has apple juice. Yeah.
or apple juice in it, some way to cut it down. And
There's more,
More sugar.
There's more sugar in apple juice. I heard this from the owner of Coca-Cola Consolidated, Frank Harris, and he says, "Did you know there's more sugar in apple juice than there is in a bottle of Coke?"
but here's the
Different sugar,
difference.
though, right?
It's a slight different sugar, but here, nobody should be drinking a lot of fruit juice is just as potent as Coca-Cola in terms of the glycemic index. But here's the difference. If you're eating an apple, okay, interesting how this all works. So you've got skin on the apple, okay, and as you're eating it, that skin's designed to slow down the absorption of glucose. Okay, so it's a much slower absorption due to the fact that it's skin. Now, if you peel that skin and ate the apple itself, you're going to end up with a fructose bolus. So there is a reason that the skin is on.
What's
right?
fructose bolus?
In other words, a high amount of fructose very quickly
like sugar.
absorbed, exactly, just like sugar. So you're
Don't
ending
peel the
up,
apple.
right? So eat the skin. That's why it's a healthy. It does slow down the absorption.
What were you going to say?
Yeah.
I mean, just as far as natural sugars versus processed sugars, biochemically, it's a slightly different structure. So it's going to be uptaken by the body a little bit differently, right? I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
you see a lot more of these synthetic sugars now that are 0 calorie, but there's a lot of repercussions to ingesting all that sugar too.
What were the repercussions? And like, give me an example, like stevia or like what's the one that everybody says causes cancer?
And then there's aspartame.
Aspartame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some evidence that they're not raising your glucose. Natural sugar is fructose, and it's digested by fructase, and it will eventually be turned into glucose. But then, as I'm sure Luke could point out in his patients' bodies, what he's seeing with their breakdowns, when you're eating a non-natural sugar, there is evidence that points out that it's raising insulin levels
Absolutely.
without raising glucose levels. So now you have a disparagement between insulin is designed to lock into glucose and to bring it where it needs to be. Now you've got this insulin roaming around and it's not going on. Where is it going to? So now the clicking mechanism, in addition, is not working and it's going to break. It's like basically running an engine without gas or any lubricants in it, and it's going to break down.
The effect on the gut microbiome
God, that's a
is
disaster.
unbelievably huge. What it does in terms
What do you
of,
mean by that?
So inside in an ideal environment within our stomachs, we've got what we call a gut microbiome. And over the past 10 years in functional medicine, we've begun to understand the huge effect that this has on the human body as a whole. Okay? Inside are all of these wonderful bacteria, okay, in the ideal environment. And these bacteria are there to break down food, to help aid in the digestion, right? Which is why a lot of the times in functional medicine, we're getting patients on probiotics, right? And we're helping to increase that good bacteria within the gut. It helps in digestion, it helps in a lot of things, and it helps in a lot of diseases. Once that's interrupted, either by artificial sugar or too much sugar or too much refined carbohydrates, you now have an environment that can't work correctly. Okay? And as a result, that's a problem. Taking antibiotics, when we have to prescribe them, affects the gut microbiome completely. So oftentimes, I'm saying to patients, I want you to take a probiotic 2 hours before the antibiotic.
That's interesting. So I've had many discussions with Luke over the years about really, really good gut health. I'm a big proponent of it. I take vitamins about it every day, like a couple gut health vitamins. And I'd love to have a discussion on like do's and don'ts to maintain really good gut health. And it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys are the experts, not me. Is it true that the stronger your gut is, the less likely you are to get sick? Which seems crazy to me that my gut, what digests my food, can affect my ability to fight disease or fight sickness. Is there truth to that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back when I started and I first looked into gut health, it was C. diff all the time. Like that's all they wanted to talk about. Yeah, it's a bacterial infection that basically rages in your gut, and you have diarrhea, you're sick, you could die. And so that was 40 years ago. Now we're realizing with the advent of the fact that we could see non-aerobic DNA in the gut bacteria, it's all opened up. And in the last 10, 15 years, we're looking at mental health, physical health. We've seen lack of, you have a child that's born non-vaginally because they have complications, and you can track their gut health through their lives that they're missing and see the difference between them and their sibling in weight, learning disabilities, depression, anxiety. Now, I'm not saying that that's 100% everything comes back to the gut, but I could tell you that if you're 60% of people over 60 have diverticulitis because they're not eating their vegetables. And you got explosion of IBS and colitis and, Crohn's. And then you have the breakdown of muscles. If you have I get a little geeky on this. If you have no vitamin B's, vitamin D's that your gut is getting, you could totally Google this. Is it protein molecules basically inert? And you have the vitamins that are underneath it. It looks like a little stick figure, and it's walking itself along the neuron, delivering it. What if you don't have those? How are you getting your protein delivered to your body, or your iron? Your ferritin level is crashed because you have no iron in your system. How are you getting hemoglobin? How are you building muscles? How is your child thinking? So I could obviously go on a long time about this.
And I think the other thing is also, as you correctly pointed out, breastfeeding is a huge component. Breastfeeding provides
for the nurturance of
the nutrients,
child.
the colostrum, that first couple of doses of breast milk are filled with immune promoting factors that are absolutely key. And, study after study has shown that. Now, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, there was a time and a place where mothers were discouraged, use formula, and we've been able to see in those studies how you march that out and see. Generation. There's no question about it. Gut health is so key, and it all has to do with what you're putting in. Are you putting in the right amount of proteins, the right amount of complex carbohydrates that you're going to find in the vegetables, right? And again, correctly stated, a lot of our youth are not being exposed to vegetables, right? So,
Luke, what do you got?
Coming back to exercise, it's another great way to increase dopamine levels and just get into more of a parasympathetic state. You're able to get rid of cortisol levels that kind of drive us through our stresses of our day, and exercise gets us out of that stressful state. when we get into more of a parasympathetic state, we're able to digest a lot better.
No,
Digest.
hold on. What state?
We're talking about the autonomic nervous system. Basically, you have your sympathetic and your parasympathetic. With your sympathetic side, you have increase of epinephrine, norepinephrine from adrenal medulla, which is just part of the organs in the body, and allows us to generate energy, really. So if we are under threat, we have an uptake of energy to get us through the threat. If we don't have a threat, we should be more of a restful state. A restful state is more think about how well do you sleep at night? Like, do you wake up through the night? Can you go to bed easily? That's when we should be more parasympathetic state.
How do you get into that state? By exercise?
It's one way.
Exercise helps. I mean, there's no question.
Can you get into
Exercise.
that before you're going to say what you're going to say? Add this in. Is there certain foods that you can eat that will get you into it sounds like you said the fight or flight, where your body's either going to go into a restful state or into a tenseful, stressful state. Is there, obviously exercise gets you, from what I'm understanding and what I know about my own body, it just relaxes me long term. Is there certain foods that we can eat that could do the same or no?
Think of the human body as we have different life cycles. So in the beginning, and I realize this is bringing us way back, but in the beginning, you're a child, you're building. So your body is like a house. Kids need more of the, not unrefined grains and proteins and, good oils and stuff. They're building their house. Then as we go into our middle years, you're going to start to build your house, replace it, sort of the years that you're capable of reproduction. Then you move into an older state where you're just replacing the roof and fixing the rusty pipes. So you have to look at nutrition and how you're doing it over the life cycle. Somebody like me, who's a middle-aged woman, I'm not eating carbs at night. Those are not restful for me. Those are going to destroy my sleep. But maybe one of like Luke's athletes who's, burning through calories, he's going to say, oh, you're going to do a carb load before you go to bed because we want to rebuild you on it. But we're definitely avoiding caffeine anytime after 12. I mean, I know that there are people who are like, oh, I could just drink coffee and go to sleep. But if I hooked you up to a machine, that is not allowing you to sleep. Things that are heavy to digest, things that are higher in sugars, any ultra processed foods, I think should be avoided. Absolutely. But we're humans and there's things that we're celebrating. I'm not having cake at night and expecting a good sleep. So there's definitely, if I'm targeting, I'm going to do some protein 3 hours before I sleep. I'm going to do high vegetable content. And then depending upon my biology, for me, I'm basically not eating carbs at night. I just can't. But Luke or Dr. Klein might be targeting, because they may be more carby at night, some rice or whole grains or quinoa at night, depending upon what they're doing. So it's really based on your individual biology.
And the key,
no caffeine.
Yeah, and the key is that I see many patients who can't get to sleep. So we've got a whole issue with that. Stop eating after 7:30 or so.
Yeah.
And there's a reason to do that. There really is. Unless, again, you are a super athlete that is preparing for,
Like a marathon.
A marathon or something else. That's different. But so eating late at night disrupts that. The other problem is laptop computers, cell phone use,
Absolutely.
right? Television watching, right? This is all so disruptive. So in our practice at Welcome MD, we're recommending, again, part of our strategy is, about 2 hours beforehand, we'd rather have you start to read, okay? Rather than answering emails, watching television programs, getting yourself upset, whatever. It's just not helpful. So putting the computer down, putting the laptop down, the cell phone down, and literally, if you think about our grandparents' generation, our parents' generation, they didn't have it. They read, right? And would read before going to bed.
I'm feeling pretty guilty right now. Like, my nighttime routine, I mean, I'm checking a lot of bad boxes right now as far as the types of foods I'll eat
You
at
need
night.
to see me for a sleep hygiene training.
right.
You
We're
train
gonna
your
do it.
kids, you train your pets. Why not train yourself? Why not give yourself a gift at night if you have children, or if it's or your kids are grown, or whatever stage life you're at? give yourself a gift at night that you're going to disconnect
That's what we say.
from everything, whether you're stretching, you're reading, you're whatever you're doing at night. Give yourself a good routine. And I do understand that people have emergency life situations. I have older parents, kids that live overseas. I put my phone 6 feet away from me. I can hear it if there's an emergency. It will wake me up, but everybody knows I'm in bed by 8. So if you stand a chance, it better be an emergency. I get up at 4:30. So, but it's key to life. There's patients that I will look at and I'll talk to Dr. Klein and say, I can't work with them until they get a sleep study, until they get sleep, because nothing else is going to make a difference.
Chronic insomnia has really happened where people
We're
cannot
just
get
too
to sleep,
connected.
Yep.
right? Because they're too connected. And think about it. The whole idea of somebody going on a vacation is to be disconnected,
Mhm.
right?
They bring their
And-
laptops and their phones.
Right. And they're bringing all of that and they're really not disconnected. And, I always tell my patients, you know what? If you're going to go away, I had one this morning. A patient came in for a travel consult and we were talking about just some of the medications that he needs and so forth and vaccines, where he's going to go in the part of the world, and I reminded him, this is the time, right? You're spending the kind of money, got to be disconnected. It's the only way.
Yeah.
And it takes people on average anywhere from 48 hours to 72
2 to 3
hours to
days, yeah.
finally feel disconnected.
And then they
right?
start ramping up a couple days before they go back into
And they
work.
do.
So there's
And
just a
that's
few days in the
exactly it.
middle.
And what happens? Your cortisol level, I mean, it's just, it's the fight or flight, and you're back into that whole, and then people come in and you hear a statement, I need a vacation from the vacation.
Yeah.
It's because they didn't disconnect.
Because they didn't
disconnect.
disconnect.
Yeah, I mentioned I was on vacation for 3 weeks. We made a conscientious decision. I did not bring any computers. I turned on my phone. As I mentioned, I have elderly parents, so I had to check in. So I arranged for my oldest to come home and take care of them. I turned my phone on twice a day to make sure that there was no emergencies. But I trust my son. He's great at taking care of them. Turned it on in the morning. Everything good? Yes. Turned it off. Didn't turn it on again at all. And I did that for 3 weeks. And I arranged to eat healthy every day. So there's a possibility of it. You're paying a lot of money to be on a vacation. Why ruin it? I won't say that didn't eat 1 or 2 desserts. I did, but I just said to them, I need meat and I need vegetables.
So give and whoever's watching, give a couple tips on how to have really good gut health before we go on to the next section.
You are what you eat. So the best way really, and I think that everybody in here can agree.
Absolutely.
And that is, number one, fermented foods have been absolutely shown to be tremendously beneficial.
Fermented
foods, sauerkraut, kombucha, adding these types of fermented foods, kimchi, pickles, have a wonderful, the gut just loves this because you're introducing some tremendously wonderful probiotics into the gut. Okay. Be mindful of really reducing the refined carbohydrate load. Be mindful of getting, these kinds of fermented foods, which are tremendously beneficial. Be mindful. And this is the key. Vitamins, great. However, it never substitutes getting from whole food, the actual whole food that's going to do that, the salads, the vegetables, right? And I've tried vegetables, over the past couple of years, different ones, different kinds. And what amazes me is you develop a taste for them. And it really is. But kimchi is another wonderful way.
Kimchi.
And in most Asian cultures, they have something that is fermented.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
All right, so let's move on a little bit. Luke, this might be more specific to you, but how does spinal health influence other aspects of your physical and mental health? So let's talk a little bit more about the spine here.
Sure. I mean, even if we're kind of talking the same dialogue as looking at screen time and increasing cortisol levels that way, physically, I mean, you're straining your eyes all the time. Whether or not you're scrolling, it's like this bright light input and you're chasing different objects around different parts of the screen. Your eyes are controlled by muscles inside your cranium. So once you overload those muscles, they're prone to fatigue, just like anywhere else in the body. What happens is we compensate, and we compensate by increasing neck tone, like tension throughout the neck. So that's a physical just compensation to being extrinsically like glued to a TV. There's different things that you can do to manipulate that tension, but addressing like the reasons why you are in the place you are. Why do you have this compensation? Sometimes it's not that you have a neck injury. Sometimes it's not that you're in bad posture, although most of us are. Sometimes it is just an overstimulation of muscles in the eye.
When I first met you, I had an issue in my groin area that some doctors wanted to like do surgery on, even though there was no conclusive. I mean, there was evidence, but there was no finality of like, this is what is wrong with you. Let's go fix it. It was like, let's just open you up and see we'll see what's in there. A lot of people say don't do that. I never end up doing that. And through a person's how I met you, and you're like, I don't even think the issue is your groin. I think the issue is somewhere else, which was really my lower back. And you addressed that, and I felt 50% better in like an hour. I've heard so much research, and I'm not a specialist in this area at all, but I know the better your body's aligned, the more, your electricity goes. I mean, there's definitely a flow of electricity goes to your body, and it affects everything. And when things get out of whack, everything gets out of whack.
Mm-hmm.
So like, can you speak into that? Can you help me help everybody understand, how do you keep your body aligned, and how does that affect when you're not aligned? How do you diagnose it? What goes wrong? And then how do you get it back in order?
It's still a matter of compensation. So I believe you were doing a lot of riding, like bike riding at that time too.
A lot.
So you probably were in a position for an extended period of time and overloaded some facets and joints in your back. And all I did was address this like glaring concern of me, like you couldn't move throughout your thoracolumbar area of your back. And I tried to address the pudendal nerves coming out of that area that were affecting your psoas, your iliopsoas, your iliacus, that were causing a lot of pain in your groin. So I affected the muscles by putting an influence on the nerves near the spine. It was a compensation pattern that you had built up over time that had led to the failure of the strategies to overcome that. Does that kind of make sense? So like our bodies are always trying to figure out how to be upright, how to move forward. And we're incredible at doing so until we have no more strategies to do that. And you were kind of at this point where the last thing to go was those nerves were just being squeezed by tightness in the muscles.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I did to release all that.
It sounds so easy, and at that time of my life, we were planning a trip with another family to Hawaii, and I came up with this crazy idea that, hey, as a group, why don't we run, bike, swim, whatever, the amount of miles that it would take for our families to get from where we are to Hawaii, which was like, I don't know, 5,000 miles or something like that. And nobody was really on board except me. I was like, let's do this. Let's bike across America. Let's figure out how to get to Hawaii on foot with your body. And of the however many miles it was from here to there, I don't remember, but I made this cool little thing and we logged our miles, and I went all in. And I think myself, of the 10 people that were involved, I ended up doing like 4,000 of the miles in like, a very short period of time, like 5 months. I was biking an hour and a half to 2 hours a day, doing gobs and gobs, 40 to 50 miles a day. When I set a goal, like I'm one of those freaks that I'm like, I gotta hit it, and I'm like, if you're not gonna help, I'll do it myself, That one seemingly fun idea for vacation and, building up to the vacation led me to 2 years of, problems in my body that everybody couldn't figure out until I met Luke. And he's like, he was the guy that was like, oh, it's so obvious, right away.
Well, you also think of the seat of a bike. You think of a bicycle seat,
yeah.
In terms of
it just
the way
tensed me up.
It absolutely, yeah.
There's many areas on the male physique that should not be pressing that far down on
for that long.
Yeah.
Not
and
for
that
long.
and it wasn't that I didn't build up any tolerance where, I went from, normally running and then I
Right.
switched to biking because I was like, I can get 4 to 5 times the amount of miles in my
Right.
bike. So I was like, let me just bike for a long time. And then, everybody I talked to was like, well, you're just, they just went to that region and goes, no, that's the problem. And Luke's like, no, I don't think that's the problem at all.
Right.
But then it led to years of us meeting together and working through stretching, working through making sure my back. I mean, you're a chiropractor by trade, and yet of the years and years I've been with you, you've cracked my back a handful of times. I'm like, he doesn't really mess with my back that much. He messes with everything that messes with my back,
Yeah.
right?
And your case was easier too because the symptomatic area was already treated and ruled out. Like, you're not getting better. So I was like, I'm not going to treat that same area. It's got to be coming from somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of easier for me.
And
That's
referred pain is a very real thing. We see it
Yeah.
a lot in medicine. Somebody coming in with abdominal pain and you're busy working it up, but sometimes it can be referred. Maybe what it is a kidney stone, right? And a patient's complaining. So, with abdominal pain, there's 30 or 40 different differential, that you go through. But referred pain is a very real thing, and that's probably what you were having.
So how do you, let's just say like you're in my situation or were in my situation, like I was, where you have a pain or an issue that's a referral from something else. How do you diagnose it? If you don't have people like you in your life, I'm a blessed guy. I've got some awesome people in my life. If you don't have that, like, how do you, first of all, like, who would you go to find, somebody to help diagnose? Because I stumbled upon all the wrong people, and it was probably, maybe a few solid voices in my life saying, don't do that, don't do that. Woodward at the time was very much like, don't you dare have somebody cut you open to figure out what's wrong with you. That's the worst thing
right.
you
He
could
was
do.
absolutely right.
And then I had other people, other doctors, like, you talk to a doctor in any field and you're just like, they're the expert. I'm going to listen to what they say. And yet a lot of the doctors in my life were telling me the wrong things. And it really came down to a completely, a connected area, but something different. What advice would you give people who have a situation like that where they're having a hard time, healing the part of a body? They don't know where to go get answers. It took me 2 years to find Luke. How do you move on in a situation like that and find healing when you don't know what's wrong?
I hear this from patients who come on board at Welcome MD all the time. And part of it is, they've been seen by their family physician, general internist, and they're getting 10 minutes, 15 minutes, right? And it's just not enough time. The one thing you can do is really disarm the physician by saying, hey, doc, listen, I need you to listen to me for a moment, okay? This is my symptoms, and I'm not getting better, okay? Grab the attention. Really take the moment and say, no, I need you to just be a good listener right now. Give me the gift of listening, okay? So that I can explain what's concerning me. Hopefully at that point, that kind of a comment is going to, please tell me what's going on, right? We've got to be patient advocates. Physicians generally, at least in my era of training, that was part of what we did. We were an advocate for the patient, that if we didn't know the answer, we're certainly going to think about who we're going to get on board to help, right? So with that in mind, that's one way is to grab the attention. The other way is to, if you're not getting what you need, then step outside and go somewhere else, right? It shouldn't have taken you 2 years, to find Luke. In my group of colleagues that I refer to, a chiropractor is absolutely one of them, and for very good reasons, right? They're very well trained. They're very skilled. It's very different because when we went through training, chiropractic was, back in the 80s,
Right.
had a very, very poor image and, amongst physicians. Well, as I've gotten into functional medicine, they play a very essential role in part of medical care. They really do.
I know you sent it to patients because I literally had a patient that I met with last week that told me, oh, he sent me this guy. I didn't know what to expect, and it was absolutely revolutionary for him. Trust your instincts too. I tell patients being, on the non-medical end of of it being more nutritionally and health focused is, why don't we start from the bottom up of where you're at? You're going to the top end, you're going to the doctors. Now, my job is to say to you, what are you doing at a base level, a ground floor level? What are you eating? How are you sleeping? What exercises have you changed? You know, it's one of the ways that in functional, we integrate the two ends of it, because I would have been asking you, like, what are you doing with like your exercise? Oh, I'm doing this challenge. And I was like, all right, that's nuts. But what did you used to do before that? And how are you doing it? And then I would have been walking down the hall and being like, this guy's on a bike for like 20 hours a day. Like we need to call in, like, we need to throw him at Luke. He needs to figure out what he's doing. And, you know, we see that with other patients. And I also have a question for you, Luke, about that too, where it's like, you got to start from the bottom and you got to start from the top. You got to go, is it a kidney stone? Is it cancer? Is it this? Because that's what we got to start to. And then I'm at the bottom going, well, what are you doing? What are you wearing on your feet? What are you eating? What are you doing? And then there's situational things like what you mentioned about time and being on the phones and everything. And you get like these, I feel like we're changing our posture and getting a hump with this. So that's another strategy that I would ask you to throw you in there on, of like, well, how do I strategize with my patients for their children? Because it's family medicine, for their children, for their families, these situational body things that we're putting them into that I could help them look for. You would recommend.
Asked, if I could just go back, thank you.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
You asked a very, very, very good question, and that is, how do I get my physician to understand that that I'm hurting, something isn't
And you're not
right,
helping.
and right, you're not helping. You know, this is why, again, you know, we can talk about just for a moment what we do in a membership medicine based. You know, it's time. And today, most physicians are allotted X amount of time and they're on to the next. You know, and you and I, you know, and you're coming in, we have all day, Brad. I mean, we can spend
at least an hour,
up to an hour, hour and a half minimum. And I'm listening to everything you're saying. And that's the key. That's why I say that if you go in to your doc and you're not getting, right, what you need, think about it. When you leave, you know, after 11 minutes and you want to see that doc again, you're looking now at another 3 to 4 months to be added. Now that you may get to see somebody else, but so the problem really goes back to, give me the gift of listening, doc. I need you to hear this.
Well, even when you said earlier about, you know, sending a referral, like, I need another specialist in your life. You sent me to a pulmonologist, you know, a month and a half ago, and I sit down with that person, you know, about my whole situation I went through this summer, and he spent an hour with me, you know, and he had on his desk a stack of paperwork from what I had gone through in Hawaii. It was literally like this thick.
I had dropped it off the day before.
God. And he went through he read everything, you know, not every word on every page, but he knows what he was looking for. And he's just flipping. He's talking to me through it. And he's like, this is what this is. Oh, this is why they came to this conclusion. Oh, I can see that. Oh, they misread this. You know, every little page, and then different tests. He's like, man, they threw the book at you. They did all these. Oh my. Like everything was going. He's like, they had 90 tests or whatever they took me through. And he's like, I can understand. He went through this, you know, where he went through medicine and just going through so much. It made me feel so good to sit there and just hear him talk out loud about what was happening in my body. My anxiety level, we've been talking a lot about mental anxiety and how it affects your body. I mean, I walked in like this, you know, because I remember talking to you like, it's not gone, you know, and I'm like, it's still there. And then as he was talking, this is what was happening to me, you know, and right at the end, he talks about my lungs, and he just gave me a shot of really fun, you know, stats about what's going on in my own lungs. And I walked out of there. Nothing changed from the moment I walked in to the moment I walked out. I still have this issue. It's taking a lot longer to heal. I was given some bad recommendation and advice about expectations from the last doctor in Hawaii, meaning very well, did a very good job, but just gave me poor expectations about time it was going to take to heal. And all he did was mentally walk me through what I'm going through, what's happening in my body, helping me understand my own tests and everything. And it just took that time, and my mental state, I walked out, even to now, I'm like, I feel so much better. And I literally was like, God set me up for this test. You know, like I felt so good at what was going on. I knew I was healing, and God allowed a little doubt to creep in, and I failed miserably because I don't know what had changed. Nothing had changed. And the doctor just reassured me. And I wish I would have had a little bit stronger faith, you know, through that situation. But looking back, what made the difference wasn't him saying it just needs more time.
Right.
It was that it was him taking the time to walk me through that. It made a huge impact, and, you know, just to do what he did. But before we move on here, you need to answer her question.
Right.
But then I also, well, you answer her question, we gotta.
Do you want me to remind you?
We were talking about like eye fatigue
Yes.
and how that affects the posture.
Yes.
So we have some reflexes in our body to help us stay upright. We have the cervical ocular reflex, and we have a writing reflex, which basically help keep our eyes in line so that we don't bend over and become like worse human beings and unfit for survival, that kind of thing. So instead, what happens is we get neck tension because our eyes are fatigued and our eyes stay level, but all of a sudden we're like twisting. Now we have like a high shoulder. Now we have a high hip on the other side to try to just compensate so that our bodies can stay up. So you can see it in people if you look for it, just eye level. Sometimes they're a little bit.
Yeah, I see it. So what would you say to the average person? You got like a student, you got a kid, you got somebody they're locked into their computer all day and stuff. What strategies? I like to tell my patients, I need you to like wander around every half an hour. If you're hydrating, you're going to get up anyway. But specifically for that, like what type of stretching, what type of because of like if I'm like, read your screen up here, not down there.
Yeah.
What can we, I'm sorry to put you on the spot. I didn't even tell you I was going to do that.
Definitely keeping it like eye level so you're not always turned to the side one way or the other. But identifying which eye might be weaker, because generally there is one weaker, and working on convergence, divergence type exercises, focusing on pen, just like little eye strength where you're focusing here, back of the wall, tracking different ways.
Excellent.
And
that'll help you do what?
It'll help retrain the strength that you've lost in your weaker eye.
Interesting.
That will help regulate the muscle tension that you've built up in your neck, and also allow better focus on screens and stuff.
So help me understand those again. So how long would you do that, and what is the actual like fun thing you do at home? Like your pen, like what was that?
You're focusing on one object that's close and then one object that's farther away.
How long do you do that for?
A couple seconds, just throughout the day, just like anything. Like you get up and move, get your eyes off a screen, go do something like this. That kind of like gets you back in a reset.
Okay. So every half an hour,
doing
hour,
that, and also taking
focusing.
And that's just general though.
That's just general, right? And then stretching.
You probably need to really identify what you
do. I'm asking for throwing spaghetti at the wall for the average person.
Yeah.
The specifics will obviously be different, but we're trapped in that. So that's what I was.
And I say to
I know I'm
patients,
putting you on the spot for like what we're doing.
Get up and look outside. Go and move every 25 minutes. You cannot sit. Tracy knows I stand all day at a stand-up desk, so I'm moving around and I'm able to do some core exercise and everything else just because it's and sitting for long periods of time again affects so many things. You are absolutely correct. The convergence, divergence is very important, and to literally then stare in the distance for a little while to give those ocular muscles a chance to just relax. Because the minute you shift back to that screen, that's strain.
Yeah. We also do in the offices. I've been sort of up everybody's, and some offices are better than others, and you know who you are. Walking during, we've got one of the office. Everybody's walking during lunch. They're going out. The other office, they're also walking during lunch, whether it's a mile or another mile. We'll get you to get your office to have a treadmill in it to keep them on there after postprandial walks, keeping them moving during lunch.
Walk?
Postprandial, post-meal walks
I
helps
do that
your
every day.
stomach. Right. So you're doing it. So guess getting everybody up to do that is something you do. Going to the furthest bathroom you can. Just because there's one in the office doesn't mean that you don't have to go to the one in the hallway. And
Walk
that makes
across
sense.
the street.
Well,
Yeah.
that I can't do, but yes.
But those breaks are also great mental breaks. And don't look at your phone. Don't do any of that.
The phone
When you
stays.
take that break, make it that little mini break and just walk around the building, walk around the area that you're in, just to get outside, get some of the vitamin D, take some
sunlight in your
deep
eyes.
breaths. And it's just, it's, you know,
Yeah.
my staff knows I leave
You
at
are
noon.
gone for lunch.
I am
I
gone
am
because
too.
what I'm doing is I'm exercising.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going in and meeting different people at the time, but also taking that moment to just decompress. Which
I love
is
it.
so needed.
I love it. I'm a big fan of this. You know, I might have felt guilty at other parts of the show, but I feel really good right now. I'm locked into this. So, all right. One last question. In your respective fields, what's one thing that people can do to promote really good health? If you could leave somebody with one really good bit of advice in each of your fields that you specialize in, or something that you're really passionate about, what would that be?
I'll start.
Everybody looked at you. I don't know why.
I'm gonna let him start,
It's funny.
and then
Spinal health. I mean, that's as far as just being able to control your entire spine and its mobility, not just like bending forward and extending, but being able to differentiate different areas of your spine and get better control that way. And don't neglect your core. That would probably be the other big thing.
How would you not neglect your core?
You can exercise your core. That would be not neglecting it.
Okay. So who else?
All right. So this is really hard for me because, I like the diet, whole lifestyle choices, diet, rest, exercise, sleep. Sleep for me is the critical issue. I can't start if you're not sleeping, because if you're not sleeping, you're not resetting your body. You can't clean out your brain. You can't clean up your gut. You can't repair your muscles, and you can't start the day off. So for me, sleep is the key. I mean, there's so many others, but it starts with sleep. If you have children, if you have pets, you teach them to sleep at night by teaching them how to go to bed. And so we call it hygiene, but it's really sleep training. Stop caffeine and I would argue sugars all day, but stop caffeine by 11 to 12. Slow down hydration in the afternoon. I want you to get most of your hydration in the morning and to midday because, we all have to go to the bathroom. Then I want you to train yourself to sleep. Build a routine. Build something soothing and relaxing for you that works, whether it's meditating, whether it's reading a book, whether it's having a little conversation with your family or playing, a game or whatever it is that works for you at night. And that's your routine. Set your sleep time. Every time you go from 8 to 9, 9 to 10, 10 to 12, you are changing time zones. You're, in essence, traveling to a different part of the country or the world, and your body does not know what it's doing. Set your sleep time within an hour to 45 minutes, and that's a sacred time. We're gifted our bodies, and it's got to be returned with most of its parts working. Let's keep the sleep time, and that's one of the big keys to it.
Awesome.
And as I said in the beginning, I agree completely, and we've talked about this. So
Yeah.
You stole my answer, of course.
Of course I did.
I think the other thing is prevention, and I'll finish by saying prevention's a whole thing, and we'll take maybe next time to talk about preventative. But really, the key here is you are what you eat. Okay, so sleep absolutely vital, but also what you're putting in your mouth.
Mhm.
Okay, I encourage my patients to again more fermented foods. I encourage them again. A portion size should be really a fist, and nothing more than that. Okay, anything more than that is again, and if you look at most portion sizes today, it's twice that.
So the entire portion for the meal, or just per section of the?
The entire portion should be the size of a fist.
Wow. So like if I have a piece of chicken and a salad, it needs to be this big?
No, not your vegetables.
The vegetables we're talking about just in terms of protein overall, everything else, but it shouldn't be much bigger than that, because if you really look at the stomach, it's not that big, right? And it's very uncomfortable and can't do its function. Digestion begins in the mouth, continues into the stomach, but it's the small intestine where all of the nutrients are absorbed and your body is maintained. So the main thing is really giving your body the healthy gut bacteria to help it do what it needs to do.
Well, this has been awesome. I have
Yes.
learned a ton. I've definitely enjoyed this conversation as much as I want to continue it. I think we need to break for the show, but I just want to thank you all.
Thank
You know, Tracy, Luke, and Gary. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to come here and be able to discuss. I think this has been a valuable show. I mean, I manage money for a living, and there's just this belief that, you know, everything begins and ends with money. We might not always think that, but we know the importance of money. And it always, in my opinion, will always take a back seat to health. And what you guys do is so vital. You've all impacted my life in such great ways. And hopefully now you're going to be impacting the lives of many other people out there. So
Well,
thank
you.
But before
Thank
we
you.
close, though, how do people get a hold of you? So if they wanted to come and see you for nutrition plan or get healed like I found healing in both of you guys, you know, so Welcome MD.
Welcome MD.
Yeah.
So just www.welcomemd.com in Charlotte, and you'll see our offices and can contact us there.
That's awesome. Luke?
Yeah, Performance Rehab Associates. You'll find us here in Charlotte.
Got a bunch of locations.
Yep.
And
Yep.
Welcome,
Welcome MD. We come as a package. I
That's
come with
awesome.
all the doctors. So if you're in anywhere and you join a Welcome MD, I work with all the functional health doctors.
That is awesome. So hopefully you enjoyed this. Thank you for watching. This has been a good show.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Thank you again.